My name's Paul Anderson. It is a distinct a privilege for me to be able to moderate this group of friends, an old boss, longtime generational friends here on this panel, dynamic business leaders, and each and every one of their own rights. They are recognized throughout our state and in many cases our nation as business leaders, and it's an honor to be the moderator today. I'm going to try and tie in a few of the previous panels. We just had a lightning round that Kurt did, and I was going to save my lightning round to the end, but I can't help but start one off since also Senator Dana Young gave that great presentation on what's at risk with her, the existence of Visit Florida, and then we just had some comments on term limits. With those two in mind, one word, what would happen if your board of directors told you tomorrow you were going to lose your marketing department and your marketing budget? One word. We'll start with Colin.
Nuts.
Others will tell your story for you. That's more than one word. Sorry about that.
No more sofa sales.
Reduce sales.
Bankruptcy.
Dominic, I hope the staff is getting all this down.
Disadvantaged.
Disadvantage. So I think it's pretty clear what would happen in the private sector if we applied one of the principles that's attempted to be applied to one of our leading promotional agencies for the state of Florida. And I certainly hope wisdom will prevail in this issue. So I think it's really important to recognize the diversity of the leaders we have here and their businesses. I'm trying to keep this a little bit general. So what do each of you see as the biggest obstacles to growing your businesses in Florida? And I'll let Eric, if you want to take that.
Sure. So there are a variety of areas that provide challenges for us, but I think the area that I find most frustrating and challenging is short-term thinking. We're in a business that requires long-term planning, long-term investments, billions of dollars of capital that will be deployed and provide benefits for customers over decades, and it is very difficult to get the kind of support and approvals necessary to do that when so many right now are just focused on the short term. And so short-term thinking is a real challenge, I think, for any of us in the state who are involved in significant investments.
In the real estate industry, I think we certainly are concerned about labor shortages and the cost of materials, and making certain that we can keep housing affordable. If in fact prices continue to rise, we're literally going to shut out an entire market that Florida so depends on. So we really need to think about how to control those costs and make it affordable, continue to make it affordable for people here in Florida.
Well, following Syd's remark from the construction industry, clearly the challenges we have are large with the skilled crafts. Also, I'd like to see us get to a reasonable immigration bill that everybody understands, that we can continue to employ foreign workers in the construction industry, because on our projects every day, the most common language I hear is English or others. I mean Spanish or others. And so we need to have an immigration bill that makes sense, that we all understand and can work within the guidelines of.
I'm in the retail furniture business, and the word for retail right now is disruption. And it's going to have impact across all of Florida, commercial, real estate, and other ways. It's good. Capitalism keeps evolving, but disruption creates opportunities and challenges.
Yeah, so I participate in an industry that is diverse within itself. We are an intensely competitive industry, not just wireless carrier versus wireless carrier, but with Google, Amazon, Facebook, the whole tech sector is sort of in this interesting ecosystem where we have to work with one another, yet also compete with one another in various ways and on various fronts. Technology is ever-changing, evolving, driven by consumer demand. And so I guess my answer to the question would be public policy that is flexible and respectful of this sector's rate of innovation and what it means to our overall economic future. So openness and flexibility in policy, from my perspective, is a challenge and important.
We're in the car business, and there is a transformation going on in transportation with respect to ride sharing, electrification, a lot of hype with respect to autonomous vehicles, all of which we're watching, but quite frankly, it's going to be a lot slower than a lot of people think in terms of the impact that it might have. One thing that I would say that we have a challenge in, we service 177 Toyota dealers in our 5-state footprint. All of them are having a hard time having trained mechanics. And getting back to workforce education, those are great careers, and the word just isn't out that it's an alternative to dead-end jobs.
Well, so taking up on some of the responses there, I heard disruption a couple of times. What are some of the disruptors that you could see facing the state of Florida? We've been through some incredible panelists and leaders and thought leaders. Yesterday was water, environment, Eric Eichenberg, and talking about those disruptors, hurricanes, weather, sustainability, resiliency. What are some of those that you see that are facing your business and will impact Florida's ability to provide for the growing population that's happening here in our state? Anybody want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take it. I think we are clearly in a crisis of climate change. And unfortunately, there was a period of time until very recently where, at least at the state level, people were trying to ignore science and pretend that it didn't exist until you have recurring flooding both in several places in South Florida. And the word will get out. Real estate prices will drop along shorelines, and it's a real crisis, particularly with respect to sea rise. There are solutions, but they're all expensive. And it's going to require a balance of public and private sector. Keith and I talk about this quite a bit, that the economic damage that is beginning to take place is extremely significant. Just in terms of insurance, people are going to wake up and realize that in order to live where they want to could be very prohibitive unless there are answers to this issue.
Colin, if I can jump on that, Colin and I and Bob are members of a group called Broward Workshop, which is a business group in Broward County, and we've taken this on as an important message, the economics of resiliency. Not so much whether or not you believe in the science or not, whether you do or you don't. The economics are irrefutable. Property taxes, property insurance costs are going to go up, flood insurance costs are going to go up, and there is the threat from the companies that do risk rating around the world of our properties. Their message to us is that if we don't get ahead of the necessary steps for resiliency, the real estate values of our properties can come into peril. And in fact, some banks' risk rating of their insurance of their loan portfolio can be impacted. So if we see a drying up of banks willing to finance residential and commercial mortgages looking 20, 30 years out, that's a real risk for us. So the state that's probably the biggest overall disruption that we face in our state from a lot of our perspective. The disruption of technology and stuff is going to create opportunities. It's just going to create winners and losers. So I don't think the state's in any kind of peril there. The disruption of resiliency is real.
I agree with Keith, and I think there are opportunities though that go along with that. For us, building in places that are above the storm surge, one of our biggest communities, Babcock Ranch, is 30 feet above sea level, and as all you know, that's a virtual mountain here in Florida. And so just thinking about where you build and then how you build with resiliency in mind and being prepared. But also you mentioned, climate change. Forget the politics of it. That's not important. It's just smart business to do things the right way. And to my left, Florida Power and Light and Eric have built 150 megawatts at Babcock Ranch, creating the first solar-powered town city in America. Those are the kinds of opportunities and things that we should all be thinking about here in Florida, and I think we are.
So on the resiliency side, I agree. There's a lot of changes going on. I think what we've seen, particularly recently, is more frequency of storms, more strength around some of the storms. And so, as an electric utility, we've been looking very closely at this for quite some time. Frankly, the 04-05 season, where Florida got hit with 7 major hurricanes in the span of 18 months, was a real wake-up call for us, and taking a hard look in the mirror at our own system. And over the course of the last 12 years now, we have actually invested about $3.5 billion, almost $4 billion, in making the grid smarter and a lot stronger, putting in more concrete, steel, putting more underground, doing a variety of things, because there's no one silver bullet, easy solution. But the payoff for these are tremendous. And we saw that firsthand after Hurricane Irma. So Irma was actually the first really major storm to hit the state since Wilma, which was October 24th of 2005. Not that we remember these things, the utility. And we saw a market change in how the system actually reacted. Irma was actually a 50% stronger storm as measured by the National Weather Center than Wilma was, and it covered a lot more counties. We currently have 5+ million customers. Those are meters through the state. We had 4.4 million customers knocked out of power from Irma, and because of the investments in the grid and the smart grid technology, we had 2.2 million customers restored in 24 hours or less. What does that mean for the state? We're a $1 trillion a year economy now as a state. So just really simple back of the envelope math, we serve half of the state of Florida. So call it 500 billion a day, divide that by 365. You end up with about $1.2 billion, $1.3 billion a day of economic impact when the lights are out. And in Irma, we shaved 3 full days, almost 4, off of the average restoration time for that storm. So that in and of itself, one storm on a simple payback, paid back a decade worth of investment. And so I think there are no easy solutions to this, but there are a number of things that we can do as a state. Building codes continue to be a big part of this. Building smartly in the right locations, like what Syd's doing at Babcock Ranch, and really, again, thinking about where we want to position the state and the population for the long term makes a huge difference.
Well, from the construction industry, the things that these gentlemen are talking about is problematic and expensive. But if you're in the construction business, somebody has to fix all those things, whether it's storms or whether it's water rising or any of the other challenges. So it's what's bad for some businesses might be good for other businesses. Sort of that's the way I look at that situation.
So a little wild card here. We are in a real time, a very fluid dynamics with respect to our trade relations with China. I can tell you, as Florida's largest port handling steel, it has impacted our volumes of business here at Port Tampa Bay. I can also tell you that with about a $500 million capital investment plan over the next 5 years, I'm sure Bob, Keith, Colin, as you're Verizon, as you're building new facilities, you're seeing increased costs based on these tariffs. So the first part of the question, how are you seeing it impact your business? the lack of a trade deal, bilateral trade deal with China. And the second part is how important it is to you to see USMCA passed as soon as possible. Who wants to start?
Being in the retail business, we do about a third of our business from furniture coming from China. I started going to China in the mid-'90s when China first opened up. So I will say that my Chinese suppliers I've become very close with and know them very well. I've probably done 50 trips, spent maybe a year of my life in China and over in Asia. And I can tell you that the Chinese know that they've been taking advantage of the United States for a long time. When I talk over a glass of beer, most of them agree, yeah, we've taken advantage of you guys. Their business is down, and they have negotiated lower prices, so we've been able to mitigate most of the tariff costs, but we've had to raise some prices, so there's been a negative impact on our customers. But overall, it's been less than I would have expected.
So as a large builder of solar facilities, and these solar panels are coming from Asia, we're on average putting over 2 million solar panels in a year in our service territory. And almost exclusively, those used to come out of China. And the tariffs were having a significant impact on the future pricing. We are fortunate that we actually went in and locked in pricing several years ago. So we were able to mitigate the impact from the tariffs. And then we work, frankly, with our Chinese manufacturers to find alternative ways for them to do the manufacturing and supply from outside of China. So they're building in Malaysia, they're building in the Philippines, and then we also work very hard to attract a Chinese manufacturer to come to the United States. And they are now manufacturing in Jacksonville. Jinko Solar actually built their first facility outside of China in Jacksonville, Florida, and those panels are now being installed in Florida. So has it added costs? Yes, it has. But it is, I would agree with what Keith said. It's actually been less impactful than I would have initially thought. But I do think long term we need to get on a much more solid footing with China on trade because they're an important trading partner. But I do think it's important that we've actually pushed back hard because the best way to have a really good long-term meaningful relationship is to have mutual respect. And I don't think that China had that for the United States from a trading perspective. I think they've got a little more of that now. And we need to continue to build that and then repair the relationship and reestablish trade based on mutual respect.
From the construction industry, early on there were a lot of threats about price increases from U.S. suppliers. A lot of that is really tailed off now. We're not really seeing a significant price increase in steel and a lot of other things that we buy frequently. Even though the tariffs are there, we're buying millions of dollars worth of wire for Eric's projects from China, and those prices are the most competitive prices we were able to find. So there's a balance. I think the bottom line, the United States is doing the right thing by dealing very tough with the situation that we've been avoiding for years, which is challenging how trade is being poorly managed across the countries.
Let me talk a little bit about NAFTA and USMCA. It was very concerning to the auto industry. In the Toyota world, 85% of Toyotas sold in the United States are manufactured in North America, most in the United States. They just have a small plant in Mexico. However, parts can go back and forth among the three countries 5 or 6 different times as added parts are put onto them before they get back into a final vehicle. And it would have been extremely disruptive to the auto industry had there not been some form of compromise and agreement. And so we're looking forward to the USMCA to be approved. Right now we're still operating under NAFTA, so there hasn't been that kind of disruption. But it is a concern. And with respect to China, we really don't have that much of an impact with respect to Chinese manufactured activity. However, it's clear that we have been disadvantaged by a lot of the trade activity by China. And the only thing that I wish our government would do was to try to find allies to negotiate with us and not just be trying to do it on our own.
I agree that the way we're attacking this is the right way to go, earn that respect. One of the bigger issues is just the volatility in the markets, and many times that does give people pause in making an investment decision.
Yeah, so less so from a tariff perspective. My industry is sort of, like I was stating earlier, very much partnered with lots of countries, particularly around equipment manufacturing. China, Huawei, there's another major equipment manufacturer for this industry. There are American ones too, but there's just frankly globally not that many. And a few years ago, I think it was, federal government started really pulling back on Huawei and the others from China, from our being able to purchase equipment from them, put them in our networks, use the devices, and so on. So for I think good policy reason. But it does, it does present a challenge. Now we're working through it, like some of the others have talked about, and we're in a good place. But I guess my own concern is, as we see that happening, the tariffs happening, and the trend that we're seeing, it appears to some, and I'm one of them, that this could be potentially the beginning of a separation of these two economies, right? There's a global economy, and maybe the pulling apart into two, maybe a more Western versus other, and I think that's something to be mindful of and keep an eye on. Already in our sector, like I said earlier, we're starting to see this unwind because of serious policy concerns coming out of our federal government.
Yeah, and I would just add that I think it's very important that tariffs really be used as very little as possible. I mean, it is a blunt tool to use for foreign policy and for economic policy, and it's frankly protectionism. And it is not what this country has really built itself on, from being able to compete in a global market. I do think the way we've handled it in China right now is the right way to go, but I think we need to be very careful and recognize that there are knock-on impacts that are not as obvious. Canada is a really good example. Canadians actually are number one foreign investors in Florida. Canadians are number one tourists in Florida. And if we end up having trade policies that negatively impact Canada, then we end up negatively impacting our economy here in Florida through tourism that shuts off, as well as direct foreign investment by Canadian companies and Canadian individuals who build businesses here, locate businesses here, buy homes here, and that has a really negative impact on our own economy. So I think we have to be very thoughtful as a policy perspective in recognizing what are the downstream impacts that occur from those type of policies.
Thank you. I think that everybody sees the importance of what's happening to our Florida companies and the impacts of the current trade policies. Eric, you had mentioned, and several have mentioned, short-term thinking and short-term vision as one of your earlier comments. And one of my questions before you'd even mention that is, we have dynamic business leaders here representing some of the top companies in our state. What is your vision for Florida's business environment for 2030? And what are some of those things that you think will get us there?
So a hallmark of Florida's business environment is predictability and stability that we have seen in the past years, which has allowed capital to be attracted here. Capital will go to where it is most profitable, both from a short-term but also importantly from a long-term perspective. And people will not invest if they do not have visibility in being able to earn a return on that investment. They will take it somewhere else. And we see that now in the fact that 1,000 people a day are moving to the state. And they're moving here because it is better for them to be here in Florida than in high-tax states in other parts of the country or in areas where it is very hard to build or sustain a business. So for us, I think we have to jealously guard the advantages that we have built over the course of the past decade plus and putting in a system that is very warm and welcoming. And that starts obviously with a whole series of areas that we have to make sure we can continue to support this wave of influx that's coming in. So education is an example of making sure that we have a robust education system, both K through 12, but also a university system that is producing graduates that can actually move into the workforce and with the right skills, the right knowledge in order to continue to grow the industries that we want to promote here in Florida. And it's infrastructure, whether it's roads and bridges and ports and airports and rail and water and, yes, electric, to make sure that we can support the 1,000 people a day who are moving here. And I frankly expect that to increase as it becomes more expensive and more difficult to live in some of these other parts of the country, because a lot of these states are faced with mandates that require them effectively to continue to increase taxes to pay for those mandates, because their economy is shrinking, the revenues are going down, and the only way to make it up is through increasing taxes. So it's a little bit of an economic death spiral that some of these states are finding themselves in, and at some point, people get tired of that and throw up their hands and say, I'm moving. And oh, by the way, isn't the weather great? And they come south.
I think also when you're thinking 2030, one of the things that makes Florida great are its natural resources. And so people do come down here for the weather, but for the beaches and all the other things that makes the state so special. So we need to continue to focus, and we are right now, which is fantastic, on being certain that the impacts that we create we're mitigating, and that we put this state on the right course as far as its natural environment is concerned. And along the same lines of what Eric was talking about is affordability, and making certain that people can afford to live here in Florida, and with that, making certain that regulations don't spiral out of control and go in a different direction. We don't add taxes that make it difficult for businesses to come down here. And then along the lines of education, educating our young people that's affordable. We have one of the most affordable university systems in the entire country, but then also having our students stay here and to continue to decrease that talent gap that has been talked about. So educating them, but also motivating them to stay here in Florida.
I'll just jump on something. Let's just think about it. If we're not living in Florida right now, and wherever we would be, and we were interested in moving, we'd be considering Florida, right? Everybody would consider Florida. If you were living anywhere else and you were up for moving, you'd be considering Florida. So we have a very bright future, but we have a fork in the road right now. And the fork in the road is we don't do anything about resiliency, and we don't start to build in the infrastructure that we have. And in 2030, we could be in deep trouble, where real estate prices are actually going down because banks are not as willing to loan on 30-year mortgages. It's not that far-fetched. Anybody who thinks that 20 years from now or 15 years from now is a given that banks will loan on 30-year mortgages, do your homework. It's not a given. And it can be a given if the state gets ahead of the necessary infrastructure to be able to handle resiliency. It's nothing we can't handle. It's nothing unlike the Hurricane Andrew in 1992, where we changed the South Florida Building Code, and now buildings are more resilient. Eric's Next Era Energy, FP&L, has invested in what is necessary. So that's what my concern is from 2030.
Yes, I would just add that while I agree with a lot of the comments, that the state today, from my perspective, is a great state for business. Verizon, I'm averaging every year, we're investing $300, $400 million in capital in the state every year. We employ thousands of people. We do millions and millions in philanthropic funding to support those communities that are underrepresented, underserved, which we must embrace, by the way, as part of the future of the state. But I think a digital future is as important as well. And, right now, the industry that I'm a part of is spending hundreds of millions to enhance the digital future of the state of Florida and other states by investing in the future of 5G technology. It's hard work. It's messy work. We're in streets. We're in rights of way trying to make that happen. But we're committed to doing it because some of what was just talked about on this panel, if we're going to get to the future state, you can't do it without a transformation in the digital technology that moves us toward that future. So I'll just add that to the conversation as an important item to think about going forward.
If you haven't done business in another state, you have no idea how lucky you are. I'm serious. It is just a totally different story. And I think success builds on success. You've had some great leadership in this state that has recognized that ultimately the answers are not from the government, but the free enterprise system. That doesn't mean that we don't have issues that we have to address. One of the biggest problems that we have, in addition to resiliency and that challenge that we have, is we have a lot of people who are in low-paying jobs. And in Broward County alone, there's close to 50% of the workforce lives paycheck to paycheck and really can't meet all of their essential needs. And so part of what we need to be focusing on is in education and attracting higher paying jobs and encouraging those companies that who do have higher paying jobs to continue to come into the state.
So, Paul, if I could only add one more thing. I think for 2030, we really need to make sure as a state that we continue to focus on diversifying our economy. There are going to be economic shocks to the system between now and 2030. How severe remains to be seen, but there'll be ups and downs in the economy. And I do worry about the fact that I talk to a lot of folks that seem to have amnesia about where this state was just a decade ago and how severe the downturn was for us, because we were still a state that largely relied on the three economic pillars that really built this state, and that's agriculture and construction and tourism. And those are great industries, and we should continue to promote those. But we have to diversify the economy by continuing to promote other industries and doing what we can to attract them. Aerospace is a great example of that. That used to be an area that was dominated by California. We are now the second largest concentration of aerospace companies in America, with 4,000 plus aerospace companies here in Florida. We need to continue to build on that record of success and expand that. We need to continue to expand the health sciences industry, the simulation industries, transportation, trade, all of the ports and the airports. And we need to make sure that when the economic downturn does occur, that we are more resilient economically because we are more diverse.
So each of you are leaders in your respective companies, well-respected companies. I know I had the privilege of being an associate of Colin Brown's at Jam Family, where culture was really the backbone of the company's success, and learned from Jim Moran as well as other mentors. In 50 words or less, starting with Colin, can you please share what your culture is at your company and how it makes you successful?
The culture in our company is the driving force of all of our success. It starts with the premise that each individual is equally important and equally valued, and that we work together to accomplish goals. We have high expectations. We expect people to work hard, but we also celebrate our successes, and just as importantly, we share in our successes. And as a consequence, people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. They take great pride in the achievements that we make. They also take great pride in the way we give back to the communities where we work. And so therefore, we have very low turnover. We have extremely loyal workforce. And they will always roll up their sleeves to get the job done.
Yeah, I love that. So a wise person once said, culture eats strategy for lunch, which I tend to think is very true, particularly a large organization like the one I'm a part of. And the way we're focused on culture right now in Verizon is really around this concept of a purpose-driven culture, because we are trying to enhance the value proposition of being an employee of Verizon. And so our stated purpose is we create the networks that move the world forward. And as part of that, we are really beefing up our corporate responsibility around digital inclusion, human prosperity, and climate protection, all wrapped around volunteerism. So to your point, Colin, really empowering our employees to take time to volunteer in the community, help in particular in those communities that don't tend to get the resources, the help that they need, and feel good about being a part of a company that's willing to allow individuals and employees to take part in that. So we take culture very seriously. We are driven by what we call the Verizon Credo, which is our guiding North Star goal for what we want our culture to be in the future as well. So it's very important, and like I started, and it's important because culture can eat your strategy for lunch. You can have the best strategy, genius strategy, but if your culture is out of whack, it really won't matter at the end of the day. So it's critical.
At City Furniture, we start with a premise, and we start with our corporate purpose, and we say, and we tell this in every work group, every day, every beginning of every shift meeting. We go over our mission, our vision, our values, and our core purpose is to enrich people's lives and make the world a better place. Maybe a little superfluous, but essentially it tells people, everybody, who, whether they're unloading trucks to unloading furniture off of trucks, or delivering furniture, or selling furniture, or doing software, what we're all about. We translate that in ways with stories. People learn from stories, so we try to tell stories about how we live that and examples. And that way, we try to work to enforce the culture. Because everybody's right, culture is critical. And at the end of the day, you want to walk into a furniture store that people are going to be nice to you. You want to know that the people who are going to deliver the furniture are classy and sharp and able to do the job well. That's what we work at.
Well, we in the construction business absolutely believe that culture is huge to the success of our company. We actually give everybody a little card that says, honor relationships. What does that mean? We care about safety, well-being, and the success of our families and our business partners. Entrepreneurial spirit, embrace opportunity, innovate, and overcome challenges. Our business is a challenge each and every day, and we have to figure out how to be determined and overcome them. Contagious energy, work hard, be nice, and we do like to have fun.
I'm looking at my partner, Tom Hoban, and I can tell you, I assure you, we spend a lot of time talking about it. We have a very diverse group of people that work in our organization, everything from construction to restaurants to golf courses. I mean, the number of jobs that we have that are so different, finance, and all with different personalities, and so bringing all that all together can be very challenging. What we did was we have a team agreement that we put together as an organization. Everyone was involved in it. Everyone has to sign it. We take it very, very seriously. And if, in fact, we find that there are certain people who just can't honor that, they generally aren't around very long. And that's very helpful for people to understand that that's going to be important. But our mission statement and core values, we don't just talk about it. A lot of people just put it up on their website, say, isn't this great? We talk about it. We have quarterly events. We bring the entire company together so that when there's a face, now that they can, when they're talking on the phone, they can actually relate that to a face. So all of you, I'm sure out there, understand what I'm talking about. But I think, we want people to be really proud of working for our organization and have a sense of pride that they're part of something special. And I think we've accomplished that for the most part. But I can tell you, it is an ongoing process, and it never ends.
So I think what everybody has said is true. I mean, culture is absolutely the differentiator, and it is what makes a company or an organization, any entity, exceptional or not. We work very hard at trying to attract and retain the best people who embrace a culture. That has, for us, it really comes down to, and we put this actually on every single person's badge. It's on the back, so they're reminded every day. We have 3 core principles that we expect everybody to live by at all times. We always treat people with respect. You do the right thing, and you're committed to excellence. And you have to reinforce that every single day. You can't just say it. You have to walk it. And if people don't embrace it, then they need to go somewhere else. That's the way we focus on organization. Never being satisfied and always focused also on safety or critical components to that culture and making sure that we can be different than everybody else, not for the sake of being different, but so we can actually provide our customers with a better value proposition than others are able to do. I'm in a business, for the most part, has been done the same way for well over a century. And we're not using technology, for the most part, that everybody else doesn't have access to. I don't have a special patent or a widget that gives FPL a real inherent advantage. Yet we are able to provide customers with bills that are 30% below the national average, reliability that was, again, just last week we were awarded the most reliable utility award in the nation, as well as a clean energy profile and customer service that's award-winning in the country. And that's really because the people make a difference. And because they're willing to think differently and they're willing to challenge even the way we do things today. And so I think that's what makes it a very different type of organization for us. It is the culture. It is, again, never being satisfied. And it's led us to even think about ourselves differently. I don't even think about our company as being an electric utility. We're a technology company that delivers power. And that's the kind of thinking and culture that we try to embed in every person that comes in every single day at work.
Wow. So we have 6 minutes left, and I think our previous panel was unanimous. I think we took an unscientific poll that everybody feels that we need to have civics and economics taught in our high schools. But I can tell you, Dominic, as a board member, you can come to this annual meeting, 40th anniversary, and get the best MBA level course you could ever get by the answers that we're getting and the intellectual capital that is being shared here on success and driving business. As we're 5 minutes left here, we talked a lot about future and futurism, the future of Florida, 2030. We all do strategic planning. It's important. We talked a lot about what the future of Florida holds, whether it's term limits, issues that are going to drive the future of Florida. And then Dr. McManus showed us some incredible data yesterday in her presentation that 25% of today's voters are Gen Z and millennials. So my final question would be to each of you. I look around in this room, I think there's some future CEOs, but I think it's important to know, how are you training tomorrow's CEOs, your future leaders in your organizations?
We have a very robust education program, if you will. We have a very robust talent assessment program where we evaluate potential high potential performers. We then give them different types of training. We make sure they rotate around so they have different types of experiences, and they're being evaluated on a constant basis. We also we have a very strong college internship program each summer. Last year, just on the Deerfield campus, we had 65 interns from 3,000 applicants. And we take from them and we pick and choose some of those that we then bring into the organization once they graduate from college. And so we're always trying to bring in fresh blood.
Yeah, so same in Verizon, just incredible training programs, cross-rotational opportunities, college education, funding for college education, wonderful programs and to help promote future leaders in Verizon. Huge sort of mentoring opportunities, formal and informal, a whole diversity of approaches and vehicles for really bringing up the next crop of talent. But we don't stop there. We go further. And because we all know in this room, I know there's been a lot of focus on the part of TaxWatch and many others in the state of Florida about STEM education for our youth as being an important aspect to our future. And Verizon has really decided to put its money where its mouth is in that area. And we, for the past few years, have been really investing heavily philanthropically in underserved, underfunded, underrepresented middle schools to transform sort of kids' understanding of STEM and to encourage them to start thinking about STEM as a career future. Thus far, we're in about 150 schools year to date. We've done roughly 52 more this year. Our goal is by 2020 to be in 250 schools, by 350 schools by 2021. And what we are doing is providing, the data, the network capacity they need, the infrastructure, the equipment, the devices, the tablets, what have you. But we're also, to a point made, I think, on the earlier panel, helping schools train teachers in how to teach STEM, leveraging technology in the classroom. Too often we sort of dump technology down and say, now you can do it, you got STEM. And teachers are sort of like, okay, not sure actually how to leverage this with my kids. So sort of a multi-year curriculum and teacher education program to really make the fact that they've got free devices and access to the network and the technology work for them and help really transform their thought about career futures in STEM. So that's us taking it a step further and really bringing together, our branding and our value proposition to customers with education and STEM in this area we call Verizon Innovative Learning, otherwise known as VILS.
So I think I got lucky. My son happens to be a smart kid, and he wanted to be in the family business, and he's now the president of the company. So he's smarter than his dad and harder working and better looking, and so he's become a really good leader for us. But there's about 3 or 4 of our senior level guys and gals that are in their early to mid-30s. We got into college recruiting, which most people would think furniture stores getting college recruiting. Well, we got into college recruiting a long time ago, so we built a really good talent pool there and continue to get that talent pool. But so like many family business, I've just been focused on coaching the young guys and gals that have potential.
We do 2 things. We're very active in college recruiting, and we've been very active the last couple of years in retired military career recruiting. And it's really produced some really wonderful, hardworking, field leadership kind of people. They have good leadership skills that they retire from the military and as an officer level. Not all of them know about construction, but they know about working with people and leadership skills in that regard, which is very helpful. We recruit from about 20 colleges, and we also hire part-time employees and summer employees with the co-op program. First 3 years, they go to a quarterly training program that's put on by an officer of our company every quarter. In addition to that, once they complete that program, we also send a lot of our top-level people to get MBA programs to continue to advance their broad thinking skills and their ability to add to the value to the company.
So experience is very, very important in our industry, and as is, I'm sure, some of your others, it's very important. So we bring in young people, right out of college, and Tom and I spend a lot of time evaluating that talent. So one of the keys for us is to promote from within. So if you're coming into an organization, they see how other people have worked up the ladder, if you will, and have become executives in our company, and I think that's very, very important. The other challenge we face, our industry is notorious for poaching and offering, I would say, large raises or dollars to take your talent. So, we're constantly on guard against that. But I think again, having a good mix of young people coming in and older, and but being able to promote from within has really helped us a lot.
So we do a lot of what was actually already said, so I won't repeat it what Colin said and Michelle and Bob and Syd. We work very hard at attracting what we call, which are the young folks, raw talent. We love raw talent, and bring them in and give them an opportunity to cross-train, to go to different parts of the organization. We're blessed because As a utility, we've gotten to be known as more of a technology company. We're part of NextEra Energy, which is the largest producer of electricity from wind and solar in the world. And that also gives us a talent pool because people want to be involved in renewable energy. So they're knocking on our door, so we're blessed that way. But really making sure that we attract the right people and retain the right people is something that we focus on all the time and have a very structured and rigid system to go through that, but then also give them an opportunity to really stretch their wings and, importantly, to know that it is okay to take risks and okay to make mistakes. And it's particularly important when you have folks starting out in their career to know that you're not going to get crucified if you make a mistake. Now, if you make the same mistake repeatedly, that's not a good day for you. And we'll help you find something else to do. But it's okay, as I explained to people being an old NASCAR fan, to brush the wall occasionally. Because if you're not going that fast, you're never going to win. And occasionally that means you're going to brush the wall. That's okay. So teaching people that it's okay to fail, if you will, and make a mistake, learn from it, and then move on is something we also focus on.
All right, how about a hand for this great panel? Thank you very much.